All right, welcome everybody to Run Book Show. Thanks for joining us today. I'm in a in a strange, different context today. I'm in a hotel room. I'll tell you the story of why I'm in a hotel room. I'm basically don't have a house. Whoops, I see. So the whole setup here is a little difficult. So we've got this echo. One second, let me get rid of that. There we go. We muted it. All right, it's gone. So, yes, I apologize. It's going to be a little technically challenging. I haven't done a one of these shows from a hotel room in a long time, and I'm working off of my laptop rather than my usual setup, which is two big monitors where I can keep track of anything. So I'm trying to keep track of everything on the laptop. So you'll have to be a little patient with me, particularly on the super chat stuff. We are taking super chat, but please be patient with me. So I don't have a home anymore in California. Sold the house, and all of that transaction has closed. And yet, for reasons I will tell you in a minute, I can't yet go back to Puerto Rico. So I'm in limbo right now, and the limbo is this hotel room. So not too bad. The hotel room's nice, but still. So let me quickly. I don't want to get into this too much. But let me give you the quick story. It says something about the whole COVID situation that I think the world is in today. I'll tell you a little bit about this. So Christmas Eve, I think it was, my wife started to feel bad, got a fever, wasn't feeling too well. Christmas, we went in to get a COVID test. Found the one place that was open during Christmas to get a COVID test. We got the test. We got two tests. We got the PCR test, the gold standard. We got the antigen test that tells you if you're contagious or not. Both were negative. So while she didn't feel well, we assumed it was a flu, cold, just a normal thing, and we went about our regular business as if it was just a cold or flu. Anyway, 2 days ago, we go and get our COVID tests because you need a COVID test to get into Puerto Rico, and we I get a negative test. This is the second test I've done in a week, and both have been negative. And my wife gets a positive test, and then we do a second test, and she's positive again. So she's positive. Now this is how the CDC recommendations work. You start from the day your symptoms started, which would be Christmas Eve, even though she tested negative. But the symptoms started Christmas Eve. You take 10 days, and after 10 days, in a sense, you're free to go. You're okay. So she technically could leave for Puerto Rico right now, even though she won't have a PCR. Even though she'd have to. She needs a. She'll get a test first, and then. But my situation is that even though I got a negative test, right? I I was with her when she was contagious. I have to take the last day she was contagious, which theoretically was that 10th day, and I need to be in isolation for 7 days. So I'm now in a hotel in isolation for 7 days, and only after that I have to get a test. If that's negative, then I can fly back to Puerto Rico. So everything's lining up for us to go back to Puerto Rico this weekend, but that'll depend. I assume the test is going to be negative. All my tests have been negative. I haven't had any symptoms, anything, and tests have all been negative. But it's a very strange time, a very strange world. So we are currently in limbo in this hotel, and but intend to be in Puerto Rico starting next week. So I'm not sure about shows this week. We'll see. We'll do them from here. I'm not sure exactly when. Probably tomorrow and Friday and Saturday. But I'm not going to commit because it depends on a lot of different things going on, a lot of different things happening. Anyway, thank you guys. Thank you for expressing your concern. Somebody says vitamin D. You know, both my wife and I supplement heavily with vitamin D. So vitamin D is not going to prevent you from getting it. It might, if you get it, cause you to get a milder form of it. Vitamin D is good for the immune system. So I've been supplementing for vitamin because I'm vitamin D deficient, so I supplement, and so have others. Anyway, that's a quick summary of my personal situation, why I'm in this hotel room, why I'll be here for a little while, and why I'm looking forward to getting to Puerto Rico soon, because I did not plan on being here, stuck in a hotel room for a week. Not fun. All right. Polls have just closed in Georgia, I think. I don't have any preliminary results. I don't know if you guys have, but the world of politics is it's insane, to say the least. And it's, Stephanie says California is the plague state. COVID is the worst right now in the South, in South Carolina, Alabama, I think Mississippi. I think those 3 states is actually where COVID is at its worst in terms of positives and in terms of ICU and in terms of hospitalization. At least that's what I read. Again, don't know what's happening in Georgia, but I want to talk a little bit about what's going on in Congress tomorrow. I want to talk about what is the super chat's going to slow me down a little bit today. I encourage you to do them because I encourage you to help fund the show, but it's just a copy paste and everything on the screen and everything going on. It's just going to be a little slow, a little bit more cumbersome than usual. Let's see. Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about what's going to happen tomorrow in Congress, the whole phenomena of Trump and his henchmen, and the variety of different Republicans challenging this election. Trump's conversation with the Georgia election officials, the whole idea that this election was stolen, and the evidence supporting the stealing of this election, and the whole attempt by Republicans to reverse the outcome of the election, which I find is one of the most, I think, ominous, horrible things that I've seen in the world of politics in my lifetime. I thought Trump would be a sore loser. I didn't imagine that Trump and the Republicans would support him in this much. But let me just say something quickly about Trump and refer you back to predictions I made 4 years ago when he was elected. One of the things that I kept harping on over and over again over the years with Trump as president is the fact that, in my view, Trump would destroy the Republican Party. He would splinter it and destroy it and make it weak and make it impossible for the Republican Party to actually stand up to the left. And I think that's happening before our eyes. The Republican Party is basically becoming irrelevant. Not irrelevant. It's becoming so fragmented, so fractured that it's going to be very challenging for them in the future to actually be a party that wins and a party that actually stands up to the left. The moral foundation for them standing up to their left has become weaker and weaker as they have become more statist, and now as they are basically trying to overturn an election. We'll see what happens in Georgia, but there's no doubt in my mind that if the Republicans lose in Georgia today, it'll be because of Trump, because these absurd allegations about the elections that both, I think, motivates people who are independent at the center to vote against the Republican Party that stands with Trump on these absurd allegations, and it motivates some Republicans to say, hell, if the system's rigged, why should I even bother? Right? You're seeing it in the Senate, where you've got, on the one hand, you've got these Republicans who are going to challenge the election, and challenge the certain states that have sent their representatives, the vote count on them, and then other Republicans who think that's ludicrous and ridiculous. And you're seeing who's who in terms of where they're positioning themselves politically. It has nothing to do with facts. It has nothing to do with evidence. It has everything to do with politics. I mean, I have to say that my respect for Tom Cotton, who's been a complete, dedicated, devoted Trump ally all these years and has followed the Trump line and and actually this week came out and said, this is ridiculous. There's been an election. Biden won. We don't like it, but Biden won. We believe in the Constitution. We believe that the states get to choose, and it's done. Stop it. So even a staunch Trump ally realizes the absurdity of what's going on. But you've got Ted Cruz, who has been a massive disappointment and an embarrassment, really, because of the fact that he read Atlas Shrugged on the floor of the Senate. So he to me is a true embarrassment, and paints us in a negative brush to associate Ayn Rand with him, and therefore with Trump and these efforts to overturn an election, the authoritarianism. If anybody out there doubted the authoritarianism of Trump, if anybody doubted the fact that he didn't care one iota about the Constitution, if anybody doubted the fact that the Republican Party, has been completely eviscerated by this president, it's happening right before our eyes right now. Now, I know there are some of you who believe that there is, after all, evidence that there has been fraud. Well, every time somebody sends me a video or something that relates to this evidence, and I go look it up, and I go do a little bit of research, it doesn't take long before it's debunked completely, where it makes no sense. I mean, what has actually happened is that Trump's challenge to this election has basically brought out all the kooks, all the weirdos, all the strange people who have come out with all these allegations, completely arbitrary, completely random, baseless. And they go on television and they lie about their credentials, or they don't lie about their credentials, but they lie about the content. And people go, look, experts are saying this stuff. And then, but when you do a little bit of research, there's nothing there. Somebody sent me this video of a guy named J.D. Pulitzer claiming about the voting machines, that the voting machines was rigged, that he managed to hack into the voting machines, that he, that he's an expert, that he indeed invented the QR code, that he is this technologist, that he has this background, that he is just amazing. And you do a little research about this guy, and he's a complete kook. Yes, he invented something called Cat QR, something like that. That succeeded for a little while in the 1990s, and then was voted over and over again as one of the worst inventions ever, one of the worst tech inventions ever. Just Google his name, read up about him. A QCat. He invented a QCat, a cat-shaped device that when you connect it to a computer, you can read barcodes and the website pops up. And this was done in, I think, the late 90s, early 2000s. But in 2006, it was listed as one of the 25 worst tech products of all time by PC World magazine. He is somebody who has been a treasure hunter, unsuccessfully searching for the Ark of the Covenant. Yes, the Ark of the Covenant. He's got all kinds of podcasts and YouTube channels, and presents himself as this technology guru. Now, if there was any basis for these accusations, don't you think that Trump could have gone to somebody like Peter Thiel and got a real technology expert to evaluate this and actually present some evidence about the real problems with, I don't know, Dominion voting machines. But no, they get these kooks and weirdos to come out. People who have been, you'll find on the web for years and years and years, for decades now, these people have been made fun of. These are not serious people in any sense of the word. And yet these are the experts that are being put forward, and that some of you, I don't know who of you, but some of you are actually coming out and presenting, look, evidence. Now, and I highly recommend, if you're watching the video of Gabriel Sterling, the voting systems manager for Georgia Secretary of State's office, where he goes through all of Trump's allegations and he refutes them one by one. He has a whiteboard, a blackboard or whatever. Not a blackboard. He has it all typed up. He has these posters with the refutations lined up. We're talking about election officials in Georgia who are Republicans, who, if you listen to the call with Trump and them, they disagree with Trump on everything, and they have evidence, and he has nothing except accusations that he's reading off of what he said in the phone call. He said that come out of Trump media. Now, what's shocking to me is not that Trump is doing this. This doesn't surprise me at all, although I didn't quite expect him to go this far. What shocks me is how many people that take this seriously. How many people, seemingly serious people, take this seriously. Now, I understand that the left, capital L, particularly the far left, are evil, and we need to do what we can to stop them from gaining power. But if you think the way to stop them from gaining power is to steal an election, which is what Trump is trying to do, then what are we trying to save exactly? Are we trying to save the American system of government by stealing elections, by making stuff up, by inventing falsehoods? Is the fact that the far left is evil by definition make the election illegitimate? Then maybe we should just ban the Democratic Party. Maybe we should have a law that says Democratic Party cannot run candidates in the United States. Would that be legitimate? Is that the kind of country we're trying to save from the far left? Is that the purpose of this campaign? We should just establish, authoritarianism of the right and, do like Pinochet did. Just shoot everybody who's on the left. Is that the solution? Is that what people are actually advocating for? To hell with the battle of ideas. It's too late for ideas. We need to go out into the street and actually impose our will on the population. Is that what objectivism stands for? Because it doesn't, clearly, but it seems that some people have just lost all connection, I think, to reality, to the world out there. Yes, the left is evil. The only way to fight the left is ideological. And you don't form coalitions with anybody to fight the left. And who is an effective fighter of the left? Trump turned out to be not very good fighting the left. The fact is that Trump lost this election. The fact is that during Trump's tenure, the far left got culturally more powerful. Politically, I'd argue less powerful, but culturally more powerful. So is Trump really the solution to fighting the left? Do we go for a failed strategy? A strategy that clearly didn't succeed? Instead of coming up with new strategies, instead of returning to what really matters, which is ideas and the battle for ideas? And if we've lost that battle, do we resort then to authoritarianism? Is that the solution? And if that's the solution, we as objectivists are dead. Because it's not like the right that's going to take over, the authoritarian right that takes over one day is going to like us. Or certainly the authoritarian left is not going to like us. They're going to hate our guts. We're not safe with any of these. So put aside who you voted for. I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about advocating for a policy that basically says anything is okay. Any legitimate action is okay, including lying, stealing, cheating, as long as it prevents the left from gaining power. I mean, I never thought I'd get to a point where this was something that Americans, a significant number of Americans, basically stood for. But that's the only way I can interpret what is going on right now. Because again, it was just another court case today that I saw. Every single one of the challenges has been turned down by the courts. I mean, it's okay to challenge an election. There's a mechanism to challenge an election. But the fact is that in this case, in every state where this election was challenged by the Trump administration, in every circumstances, in every court, even Republican courts, even judges appointed by Trump, they all turned it down. Now, I've heard people say, oh, the courts can be wrong. I mean, look at the OJ case. Yeah. First of all, the OJ case was a jury. It wasn't a judge. But secondly, we're talking about 60 OJs in a row, 60-0. 62, Ian says 62 court cases, plus appeals of appeals. 62 OJs in a row. I don't think 62 times OJ is acquitted. I think if you ran it 60 times, OJ would be convicted most of the time. Our legal system is flawed, significantly flawed. But of all the branches of government, I think it's the healthiest. 62 cases, appeals, Supreme Court that has a majority of 6-3, and not a single vote in favor. And this doesn't bug anybody. The people who just support Trump no matter what, it doesn't trouble them that 62 times this has been thrown out. And I wonder if they read, because I did early on, I haven't recently, but I wonder if they read the actual court decisions. You know, go read what the Pennsylvania appellate court wrote by a Trump appointee, a Republican court, what they wrote in terms of just how viciously they went after the court case that Giuliani brought to them. It was ridiculous. They rejected it, not little things. 62. So Wayman says they rejected only on standing and on evidence. Not true. Not true. Some of them were on standing, but standing matters. If you have decent lawyers, you don't bring cases that don't have standings. It's an embarrassment how many cases were thrown out on, quote, technicalities. It shows how pathetically amateurish this legal team is. But that's not true that they're all on standing. Many of them want evidence. On the lack of evidence, they were thrown out by the fact that what was presented was a lack of evidence. And many of the judges said, when they threw it out on lack of standing, that they would also reject it on merit. Indeed, even in the Supreme Court, where Alito and Thomas said, we think we should hear it because we think we should hear every lawsuit between states, they said, but on the merits, there's nothing here, and we would not vote to give the injunction that the Texas Attorney General asked for. So, look, read the cases. Don't listen to, I don't know, whatever the Fox alternative is. Fox is not Trump supportive enough. So whatever the Fox alternative is right now, don't read that. Actually, read the cases. Read what the judges actually say. When Giuliani was asked to present evidence, they had none. They bailed on presenting evidence. That's one of the criticisms that the judges write in their critique, is there's no evidence here, and you're not claiming fraud. Even though publicly you're saying there's fraud, in the court case, you're not claiming fraud. I mean, and then you see the cast of characters. I mean, from Giuliani on down, These are not good people. These are not trustworthy people, starting with Giuliani, the least trustworthy person I know, I've heard of. Right? I don't know him personally. Now, if you don't trust the judges, if you don't trust judges in America anymore, then why do you trust Trump? Why do you trust Giuliani? Why do you trust Republicans? I don't trust any, okay, fine. But then it's anarchy. Then there's nothing to trust. If you don't trust the legal system at all, right? Including Republican judges, no matter who, including appeals, including this, the whole thing, the whole system is gone. And you don't trust the Democrats, and you don't trust the state authorities, because you don't trust the Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Georgia state authorities. And why do you trust Trump and his cronies? Aren't they all part of the same system? And if you don't trust any of them, then what's left? What exactly are you fighting for? What America do you think you have? What America do you think you're going to salvage? If you've lost trust in everybody out there, including Republican elected officials, remember, Georgia is Republican through and through in terms of the state officials. Then what are you fighting for? For Trump? Because he changed anything in the last 4 years? Things changed. Things got better in America. We suppressed the left. We victorious against the left. We were winning the intellectual battle, the philosophical battle for a better future for America. Give me a break. And if you want more evidence, ultimately, did he drain the swamp? No, he just replaced the swamp animals. He put his swamp animals instead of the other party's swamp animals in there. And if you want the ultimate example of the complete and utter political, incompetence of the Trump administration, then you've got COVID and you've got the vaccinations now just staring you in the face. Not only did they completely screw up testing, And you can read about the CDC. I mean, you can say, well, it's the CDC, it's not Trump. But Trump is commander-in-chief. Trump is the boss. The buck has to stop somewhere. Every aspect of government has screwed up COVID. So let's re-elect. So let's trust the person who was in charge of all these departments with more. And now we've got COVID distribution, and you're going to say, I know, you're going to say, oh, but it's the states screwing it up. Well, why are the states involved? I mean, Warp Speed was a federal government program. He could have done, the federal government could have decided to do anything it wanted with these vaccines. They could have had the military distributed. They could have had the private sector distributed. They could have had the price mechanism distributed. But no, they chose to have the states distributed. And then they screwed that up. And then they gave guidance to the state, which makes no sense. The states don't know who to vaccinate, who not to vaccinate. Vaccinations are being held up. The wrong people are being vaccinated. The wrong doctors, the wrong medical professions are being vaccinated. The whole COVID vaccination, other than the actual developments of the vaccines, which had no government involvement, other than the actual development of the vaccines, the whole thing has been an unmitigated disaster. And yet you trust the guy in charge of this? He's the guy you trust. You don't trust the courts. You don't trust the people in Georgia. You don't trust the people in Wisconsin. But the federal government, they completely messed up. They completely screwed up COVID. Them, you trust. In God or Trump, we trust. Is Biden and Harris going to be better? Of course not. Biden and Harris are awful. They're going to be terrible. They're going to be horrific. Okay. But Trump lost. Biden is going to be president. Start going after Biden. But pretending that Trump didn't lose and fighting this ridiculous anti-American, anti-constitutional battle to try to keep him in power will undermine your ability to convince centrist thinking Americans to vote Republican next time instead of Democrats. Because the fact is that right now they think, and I think to a large extent justifiably, that Republicans are loons, are crazies, are insane. So Biden might be bad, might be moving us towards communism, towards the left, but Republicans are literally insane. They're crazy. They believe in conspiracy theories. They believe in QAnon. They believe in nutty ideas. So, Biden and Harris look sane in comparison. As I said from day one, as soon as Biden gets in office, we'll go all out attack on Biden. Great. But what's the alternative? We need a sane alternative. And the Trump And those who are dedicated themselves to everything Trump have made the Republican Party an illegitimate party, an illegitimate opposition party. So who's the alternative to the horror of Biden-Harris? Who could win? Ed says he hates Republicans and detests Democrats. Yeah, I do too. But at least there can be a role for a Republican Party in opposition to slow down, to stop the Democrats from the crazy stuff that they want to do. But right now, that Republican Party has lost all credibility. That Republican Party has lost any moral authority it might have had. It's dubious whether they ever had it, but they might have had. Because they're basically endorsing the nuts. I mean, the real nuts. The Looney Tunes. This shady, Pfizer. Go read up on him. And read the Georgia's, rebuttal, line by line, of every claim that Trump made. It's just wrong. But you can make any claim. That's the thing about the arbitrary. You can say anything. You can present yourself as an expert and say anything you want. And nobody can prove it untrue because it's completely arbitrary. It's detached from reality. Dead people voted. So the Georgia says, no, maybe the two we're investigating, but we've looked at everybody else. Two, maybe two. We're still checking. But at most, it's two, not thousands. And if government has lost all credibility, everything, then we're in a deep doo-doo. We're in deep trouble, people. Because, we've eviscerated the one chance we had to slow down the Democrats. But I warned you. That's all I can say. I've warned you for 5 years now that Trump would be a disaster. And what is happening right now, I couldn't have imagined. 12 Republican senators and 140 House members. And I believe most of them know full well that what they're doing is BS, that it's based on nothing, that they would try to stop a legitimate transfer of power is mind-boggling, just mind-boggling. And it should be clear who here is trying to steal the election. And while I despise the Democrats, I despise everything the left stands for. Right now, today, they are not the problem. They are not the ones destroying the American Constitution, destroying whatever's left of the credibility of our government and our process. All right. I do. I am deranged. Absolutely. I am so it should be enraged. I have Trump enragement syndrome. I'm enraged by what is going on right now. It is, the mindlessness of so many. I'm still waiting. Maybe next week, all the people who told me that tomorrow is going to see that Trump retain power. I'm waiting for them to come on the show and say, "Whoops, we were wrong. You were right. You're wrong." Because on January 20th, Biden will be president of the United States. And you guys, I expect you to be here saying no. There are bigger issues than Trump, absolutely. Like the sanctity of the Constitution. That's a big issue in the Trump. Like the legitimacy of our voting and of the federalist system. We used to be, thank you, Ashley. That's very generous. The legitimacy of our federal system. You know, the responsibilities granted to the states rather than the federal government. Yes, those are much bigger issues than Trump. And you think that people like Ted Cruz would know that what he's doing right now is undermining republicanism, undermining so-called state rights that supposedly Republicans stood for forever. I didn't jump on the hate train. I started the Trump hate train 5 years ago. So didn't jump on anything. But it's not an issue of Trump again. It's an issue of the Constitution. It's an issue about evidence. It's an issue about the court system. It's an issue about what kind of world you want to live in. What kind of world you want to live in. Somebody asks a super chat question, why do you think the election is legitimate? Because I've seen zero evidence, real evidence, that it's not. The default assumption in an election is that it's legitimate, is that you have to, if you think it's illegitimate, the burden of proof is on you. And every time I've seen somebody's presented evidence and I've gone and checked it, it's turned out to be bogus. So I've seen zero evidence, never mind proof, evidence, that it is illegitimate. The courts have not accepted that it's illegitimate. 62 courts and appeals have rejected this. So the default is it's a legitimate action. If you think it's illegitimate, you've had, weeks and weeks and weeks to present hard evidence, proof, to organize a court case, to present that court case to a court, present it where you have standing, do the homework, do the legal homework to do it right, and challenge it. But you lost all that. So enough. I've done the statistical stuff. And if you know anything about statistics, you know that it's bogus. Sorry. I've looked at the statistical stuff. It's bogus. And look, I'm not a world-class expert on statistics, but I would bet that I know more statistics than most of you. Probably a large majority of you. Because I'm a finance guy and we do a lot of stats. The so-called statistical evidence is bullshit. The technical term of it is bullshit. It doesn't hold up, any of it. And all you have to do is Google the critics of it and put them side by side. And maybe open up a stat book and try to evaluate what you think is legitimate or not, rather than just accepting anything that, again, the latest replacement of, I get a lot of emails from the alternative right media. And I opened up an email the other day that said, Georgia Secretary of State, arraigned for treason. He's a Chinese spy or something. I said, wow, that's a big story. That's major. So I go look it up. And I've looked. And no, he's still running around. He's not being arraigned. He's not being arrested. Turns out somebody just made it up. They just make it up. And that's the world in which we live. On the internet, you can make anything up that you want. Yeah, you don't have time to do the research. So why are you taking a position? I mean, man, it's stunning to me that people, I accept that you don't have time to do the research. This is what we have a court system for. So you don't have time to do the research. You just believe whatever Trump's people say. But then you don't know anything. And if you admit at least to yourself, if not to anybody else, that you don't know. And again, the burden of proof is on those who claim there was fraud, that the election is illegitimate. And there has the burden of proof, and there has been no proof, never mind evidence. All right, enough about that. One of the things that Yeah, maybe. So Wyatt says, like when they got the Pulitzers for suggesting Trump was a Russian asset. Now, maybe it's the same thing. But then if you're going to criticize the left for making up stories, then you've got to criticize the right for making up stories too. I never traded in the Russian story because I didn't think it was interesting and I didn't think it really had anything behind it. So I never commented on it because. So just say you don't know. But don't accept the lies from the right because other people accepted the lies from the left. If the left lies, then identify the lies of the left. But when the right lies, if you're going to retain any kind of legitimacy, if you're going to retain any kind of objectivity, if you're going to be an honest actor, honest with yourself, forget about others, then identify their lies as lies. Stop being tribal. Stop being tribal and mindless and just being anti-left. And therefore accepting anything that the anti-left holds, including getting rid of the Constitution. Because the Constitution right now helps the Democrats, so let's get rid of the Constitution. Evidence, guys. Evidence. Not hyperbole. Not Democrats are evil and therefore they might try to cheat. Evidence. Democrats are evil, therefore they might cheat in a Republican state run by Republicans where Republicans are monitoring everything. And one of the things, this will be my last point, I hope. One of the things that's really important is to note that I at least believe that central planners are pretty incompetent, that politicians, including the Democrats, are really, really bad at what they do. I mean, look at the vaccine. Look at the distribution of the vaccine right now. Look how incompetent they are at the federal and state and local level. It's just an unmitigated disaster. Imagine what would happen if FedEx and Walgreens and Walmart and Amazon took it over. We'd have vaccinations like this. The public sector, the government sector is incompetent. Yet the Democrats are so incompetent that they managed to pull off a sophisticated, multi-state, systematic fraud right under the noses of Republican election officials. Nobody caught them, and nobody has any evidence that they did it. Just speculation. They're that good. Give me a break. All right, sorry, but so one of the things I'm looking forward to is not having to talk about Trump. After January 20th, we'll probably still have to talk about Trump because he'll still be chipping away and creating havoc within the Republican Party and causing disruptions and creating the chaos and havoc and disintegration of the political party, which, as I said, is going to make it really problematic for them to win in the future. But hopefully we won't be able to have to talk about him as much as we do right now. So it'll be nice to be over. Okay, so let's go after the left now. Much more interesting, right? Or at least this story I found really interesting. So it turns out, as you know, I'm leaving California. I'm in a hotel on my way out, sold my house, leaving. And it turns out a lot of people are leaving California. And it turns out that a lot of tech companies are leaving California. As you know, Elon Musk has announced that Tesla is leaving. Oracle has announced that it is leaving. A lot of people who are freed up now to work at home, don't have to be going to the office, are leaving California. There's generally, at least documented, an exodus of tech companies out of California to other places like Austin, Texas, and other places like that. And one of the interesting things that's happening is that the left in California is going apoplectic, because the fact is that the only reason California is afloat, the only reason California has any kind of money, right, is because of these people who are leaving. It turns out that the top 1% of earners in California pay half the state's taxes. So 50% of the taxes in California come from the top 1% of earners. Talk about progressive taxes. California has the most progressive system maybe in the world. 1% pay 50%. But the 1% are leaving. At least some of them are. Many are staying, but some of them are leaving. And this worries California elites. This worries people in Sacramento. This worries the activist far left that is entrenched in California. Because where's the money for all their programs going to go? Who's going to be the scapegoat for all the problems that they have created in the state? So what are they doing? They're basically declaring that leaving California is immoral. Here's a statement by one statement. The thing I like least about the folks who leave San Francisco and Silicon Valley for Texas and Miami. Texas and Miami have no state income tax and far less regulations than California does, particularly than San Francisco. And lots of problems in San Francisco, which we'll get to in a minute, beyond just taxes. And wherever else is the crapping on the place they left after they've extracted all they can from it. The Bay Area helped you build your immense wealth, and that's the thanks you get. So tech, entrepreneurs, extracted wealth from Silicon Valley. I mean, there was basically wealth in the hills, in the mountains above Silicon Valley. And the tech entrepreneurs came there and they extracted it out of the mountain. And that's how we got Zoom. And that's how we got Amazon. And that's how we got Oracle. And that's how we got Tesla. It was in the mountain. It was, they mined it out. And then they left, right? I mean, it's just unbelievable. Or another one, with many of the Valley's richest companies fleeing the Bay mid-pandemic, I feel compelled to speak out. There's no question that California is imperfect. The cost of living, taxes, and policies, among other things, make it difficult for lots of people to succeed here. What I take, let me just get this right. What I take issue with is our leaders, people of means, abandoning our community when it needs us most, after being, that's my commentary, reaping the benefits of Silicon Valley talent, tech, incubators, mentors, professional networks, and culture until they no longer need it. I mean, this is reversing cause and effect. Who brought the talent, tech incubators, mentors, professional networks, and culture to Silicon Valley? It's the entrepreneurs, the people who build businesses. Oracle, Apple, Google, they brought the people to Silicon Valley. They didn't extract it from the mountains. They brought the people there. They brought the wealth there. And they created the wealth. They created the jobs. They created the opportunities. They created the network. They created the incubators. These are the people who made Silicon Valley. Made it into what it is. That has benefited all these leeches, parasites, who now choose to condemn them for leaving, as if it's immoral. Because your duty, remember, your duty as a good altruist is to serve the community, not yourself. It's the sacrifice. And if taxes go up, then pay the damn taxes. And if the cost of living is high, then you got to pay the cost of living. And by the way, the cost of living is high because of these parasites. We'll get to that. The people who built Silicon Valley, who built San Francisco, made San Francisco into what it is today, are the tech entrepreneurs. They are the 1%. They are some of them, unfortunately not enough of them, are leaving because they've had enough being milked, being sucked to death, being stabbed in the back, being blamed for every problem San Francisco has. Why? I mean, most of the people live in Silicon Valley and San Francisco in the tech industry. Most of the people live there in tech. Were not born there. They immigrated there. Many of them from foreign countries. Some of them from other states. And yet they owe a duty, an altruistic duty, to stay in spite of all the hardships being posed on them, so that they can continue to fund the parasites and the leeches that exist in Silicon Valley. Now, I really encourage you to read this article. It's called Extract or Die. It's by something called Pirate Wires. Mike Solana. Mike Solana works for a venture capital firm, Founders Fund, Peter Thiel's venture capital firm. And it's excellent. This is an excellent article. I encourage everybody to read it. I encourage everybody to support it. He just goes out. He doesn't get the moral point. He doesn't get that this is altruism and but he gets the existential point. He gets what it means. He gets what they're trying to do. He gets who created the valley. He gets who creates the wealth and what these people who created nothing are trying to do. And I would definitely encourage you to read the article and get it out there, distribute it, Facebook, Twitter, whatever. Get the word out there. Businessmen haven't taken anything from the community. They created the community. The men and women who are leaving are the talent. They are the incubators. They are the ones who built the companies. They're the ones who created the startup environment. And this is great, the way he identifies all this in this article. He writes California is beautiful. San Francisco is truly, I think, one of the most beautiful cities in the world. But the soil isn't made of magic. There's no such thing as digging for microcode. And the Bay Area nativists' anti-immigration political climate has certainly not created the tech community, which is populated largely by immigrants, be it from out of state or from out of the country. But these are nativists of the left who believe you have a duty to your soil, to the soil you built, to the communities you built. You have a duty to sacrifice for them. He writes, the technology industry has brought tremendous tax revenue to the Bay Area. Put aside, the budget of San Francisco literally doubled this decade from about $6 billion to over $12 billion. With our government's incredible historic abundance of wealth, the Board of Supervisors presided over a dramatic increase in homelessness, drug abuse, crime, now including home invasion, and a crippling cost of living that can be directly ascribed to the local landed gentry. I love that he calls them landed gentry's obsession with blocking new construction. This later piece is important, as it appears to be the only thing our board cares about, blocking new construction. This is because significantly increasing the local housing supply would decrease the value of the multi-million-dollar homes almost every single one of our supervisors owns, and we could never have that. So he's saying, San Francisco has had all this money. The tech has created this productive community, and what's the reward that San Francisco has? Unbelievable problem of homelessness, drug abuse, crime, and now a crippling cost of living. He asks, are they corrupt or are they stupid? And his conclusion is clearly they're both. What have the San Francisco Board of Advisors managed to do? They managed to ban vapes, scooters, electric bikes, mostly, and those little, I love this, those little, I'm quoting from the article, those little plastic swords that free men in free countries are still allowed to stick in cocktail fruit. He means plastic straws or plastic anything. This is San Francisco. This is what corruption really leads to. This is what the left really leads to, but not the left of technology. The left of what he calls landed gentry, who have no incentive to actually have construction, to clean the place up. By the way, San Francisco has instituted something called the Office of Emerging Technologies, because they don't trust venture capital. So the Office of Emerging Technologies, and he writes, quote, which in theory prohibits almost every future company and technology from existing in the city without prior approval from the local government. Now, this sounds like it's straight out of Atlas Shrugged. Laws, quote, laws aren't enforced in San Francisco. So the OET, the Office of Emerging Technology, hasn't really come up. But a company in the city can now be attacked by the board at any moment for almost any reason. He says this is the nature of ambiguous laws in a one-party state. In a country where nothing is technically legal, punishment can be meted out almost for almost any whim or unjust personal reason, and that can be imagined by small-minded people with political power. Now that's straight out of Atlas Shrugged. This guy has clearly read Atlas Shrugged, because that whole analysis of why that's in the conversation with Reardon, and I forget the name of the Dr. Lawson from the State Science Institute. That's a straight quote out of that interaction, right? Where the guy says, we don't want you to follow the regulations. We want you to break them so that we have power over you. It's exactly what he's describing here. He writes, the Bay Area housing, homeless, and drug crisis are all exacerbated by the state government, which is as incapable of managing its finances as it is incapable of managing its public lands. We are now teetering on the edge of true financial ruin in a state of endemic, constant wildfires caused by government. And he goes on and on. I mean, it's truly, you've got to read this and you've got to get this circulated, get this out there. And then he says one of the reasons for this is that counter to what many of you who hate big tech argue, the problem is that big tech and technology companies not engaged in politics. They've left politics alone. That just as I've described when I described Microsoft in the 1990s, in terms of local politics, tech has said, we don't have time for this. We're building companies. We're creating wealth. We're building technologies. We're busy. We don't want to worry about local politics. And the politicians in San Francisco have therefore scapegoated tech workers for the housing crisis that they created, that the government created. And then the media just amplifies this. And nobody defends big tech, including technology companies. And this again, he gets right in the article. He says the one thing is that the technology companies should be blamed for. It's that they have not stood up for themselves, that they've not fought for themselves. I will post this article on my Facebook page and I'll tweet it so you can have access to it. I think somebody on the chat has already put it up. Ian, thank you. Whoops, I can't get it to show for some reason. It won't let you show that. But anyway, the link is, it's Extract or Die Pirates Wire. So just do Extract or Die Pirates Wire and you'll find it on Google. This is great. No one moved to San Francisco, he's talking about the tech guys, because they wanted to run for local board of supervisors. I get it. But if 2020 proved anything, Its local politics is almost the only thing that matters in terms of our day-to-day existence. And if the deterioration of San Francisco can't be stopped, I at least hope it will be remembered. We can ignore local politics, and this is again a great line, but local politics will nonetheless shape our lives. And a sufficiently unhinged city hall can destroy almost anything. And that's, we focus on Trump, we focus on Biden, we focus on national politics. But one of the great cities in America, and maybe more than one city, because if you look at Seattle and Portland and you look at New York City, these cities are being destroyed by local politicians. And these cities are home to the most productive industries we have. And we ignore local politics. Here's another good line. I just think this is really, it's a good article. Again, I wish he had the moral angle, but he gets it. Right? If what the technology industry has given the Bay Area constitutes exploitation, then for the love of God, Mark Zuckerberg, exploit me next. That's a great line. So he says, in any case, regardless of the city we land in, he's talking to his fellow tech guys, there's no ignoring the rest of the world anymore. Grab your shovels, folks. We've got work to do. So these are the kind of people we need to support. These are the kind of people, for example, in my view, that are really turned off by what is going on right now in national politics. These are the kind of people who want an alternative and don't see it in the Republican Party and don't see it in the Democratic Party. These are the kind of people, these tech entrepreneurs, these venture capitalists, are the kind of people that we need if we're going to be successful, if we're going to win. They're the kind of people who should be on our side. They're the producers, the real producers. But we need sanity on our side in order to attract them. All right. Anyway, so I encourage you to look at that article, and it's really interesting. I'm getting mixed signals here in California because on the one hand, people are leaving, that's clear, and a lot of tech is leaving. But at least in Southern California, home prices are through the roof, and it was very easy to sell my house. Lots of other people I know around here, they're getting multiple offers. They're selling very quickly. They're, in Los Angeles and in all the coastal communities. I think the same is true from what I'm hearing in the Bay Area. So while there are people leaving, there are also people coming in. So it's going to be interesting to see how the situation in California evolves over the next few years, and how, if this movement out of California is real, what kind of impact it has on a state. Think about it. The state might be losing 50% of its revenue. Not everybody's going to leave, but a significant portion of its revenue in the next few years. How does that impact it all? It's going to be interesting to watch, and it's going to be interesting to watch, where do these guys go? Where is the new Silicon Valley? And when they go there, do they bring their leftist politics with them, or do they learn from their experience in Silicon Valley? Do they learn from their experience in San Francisco? I can't think of a city, in a sense, in worse shape. Not in terms maybe of demonstrations and like Seattle and Portland, but in the sense of just day-to-day city management than San Francisco. The homeless problem in San Francisco is just so horrific. It's truly nasty, and that is only going to get worse. It's not going to get better. Same thing in LA, by the way. In spite of that, real estate prices are going up. So I don't get it. I don't understand it. So it's going to be interesting to keep track of. Okay, thanks everybody. That was me speaking straight for a while. We're going to turn now to some super chat. I think I've captured everything. If not, let me know. I'll go over these. And of course, super chat is open. Feel free to use it. I don't. Unfortunately, my screen bandwidth is narrow, so it's hard for me to identify the ones that are above $20. So I apologize. I'm not going to give them priority. I'm just going to go in the order that I copy pasted it. But if you want to support the show and you like what I do here and you like the message and you want to see this grow and expand, we've already raised here $300. It'd be great to see that number climb through super chat or through support. And again, Ashley, thank you for that contribution and the support. Okay. Why would you ever sell a property in California? California, New York City will always come back. Isn't it actually better to buy in California or New York now when there's blood in the streets and everyone thinks the world is ending? Well, I mean, at least in California, prices are going up, not down. I mean, the truth is that California and New York have always come back in the past. But I don't see how the future plays out in California. If you look at the politics, if you look at the deficits, if you look at things like homelessness, if you look at just the spending, and you see people leaving, you see the meaningful people leaving, then I don't know how California comes back. California has the best weather. It has great infrastructure, other than it needs more highways. It's just look, California is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful place to live. I mean, with all my complaints about the people for the most part are wonderful. Orange County in particular is a great place to live, but when I lived in San Jose, I loved it. But I'm not sure California will come back. I just, at some point, things will snap. Things will get so bad that people won't want to bring them back. And there's a real question about New York City, the way it's responded to COVID. There really is a bloodbath. The number of businesses that have closed, the number of people that are left, the banks that are now allowing people to, to work from home and away from New York City, the number of companies that are moving their headquarters. I wouldn't buy right now in New York, although granted, I mean, it always has in the past come back, but it's never been this bad. Not from the perspective of business, not from the perspective of governance. I mean, it was bad in the 70s. It was really bad in the 70s. But in many respects, while crime was worse, and I don't think the politics were worse, and I don't think the business environment was worse. But Dave, we will see. You might prove me wrong. But I was selling in California. I'm selling California generally. I am moving to Puerto Rico. I'm buying in Puerto Rico. So one of the reasons I sold in California was so I could buy in Puerto Rico. That's where my life is going to be from now on in terms of my permanent base. Hopefully travel will resume. I'll be able to spend time in different parts of the world, in different places. Hopefully I'll be able to get together with you guys in New York, spend some time in California, spend some time in different places. But I'm at the point in life where I don't have to live in New York. I don't have to live in California. I don't have to pay those taxes. I don't have to have that burden. I don't have to abide by those regulations. I can live where I want to live. And for me right now, the best place in the world is Puerto Rico for a variety of reasons. What does objectivism and or Rand say about redemption? For Keating and Wyndham, it is too late in different ways for each. Is there no possibility of getting on the right path if you spent a long time on the wrong premise? So it depends what you mean by redemption. Certainly moral redemption is possible. Wow, Christian, thank you. That is incredibly generous. I really appreciate that. I take that as you appreciating the values I provide. So thank you. So moral redemption is possible. What it requires is a acceptance of the immorality that you commit, and acceptance of the things, the bad things that you did, restitution for the damage that you caused others, admitting and asking for forgiveness and redemption from yourself and from the people you affected. And then I think moral redemption is possible. But there is a point in which getting your life back on track becomes impossible. There is a point in which abandoning your values for long enough, you cannot. I've often said you only live once. Every second is a second you'll never get back. But it's also a second that you didn't spend developing your passion. It's a second you didn't spend pursuing your values. It's a second you didn't spend becoming a better person. It's a second you didn't spend gaining new knowledge and gaining and developing and improving. And that you can never get back. Those seconds are gone. And life is finite. There is only so much time. And because of how we're structured biologically, certain skills need to be developed when you're young. And as you get older, it's more and more difficult to develop those skills. Peter Keating, if he was going to become a great painter, he needed to start when he was young. He needed to devote himself to it when he was young. He needed to experiment. He needed to try things. He needed to study. He needed to learn. He needed to find his voice. He needed to figure out what worked. He needed to do that all when he was young, and he needed to apply that spirit of youth, that idealism. But once he's older, even though he tries to get back on track, it's gone. To change his psychology at that point to a psychology of the kind of artist he would have liked to be when he was young is almost impossible. To develop the skills that he didn't develop when he was young is almost impossible. At some point, depending on what you're trying to do, it's too late. So this is why I urge you so often and so repeatedly to focus on your life, to not let another day go by without thinking, am I on the right path? Am I doing the right things? Am I doing what I want to do? What I think is important for me to do? What is consistent with my values? What is consistent with my ability to be happy and prosper long term? That's the orientation. That's the focus that you have to have every day. Ask yourself that question. Oh, well, you don't have to do it every day, but do it often enough so that you don't miss out, that you don't take a wrong turn, that you go down a path without questioning it. Because some things cannot be fixed. Waynand cannot go back. Keating cannot go back. Dagny's mistake, on the other hand, Reardon's mistake, on the other hand, are fixable. They're caught in time. They encounter a genius who can fix them. And again, I'm going to try not to give spoilers. So they can fix their errors. They can fix their mistakes. They're young enough, they're smart enough, they've got enough of a support. And they're good enough even leading up to that. They haven't given up on the things most important to them, career primarily. Reardon and Dagny. Focus on career. That's so important. Yeah, so there's a point of no return in life. Don't reach it without questioning, without committing yourself to the values that you really see as important. Wanda Freeman reminds me, don't forget to like the show. Don't forget to like it before you leave. We've got 176 people watching. I think we were over 200 at some point. Only about 100 likes. So there's a lot of people out there who should be liking the show who have not done so. Don't forget to do it. Yeah, it's gotten dark because it's gotten dark outside. The window's open and I have no lights on except a light in front of me. But that's okay. It gives it kind of a dramatic, cool effect. So hopefully that's nice. But yes, don't forget to like the show before you leave. Don't forget to share it. Don't forget to share the short videos. Don't forget to engage in social media. Okay, let's keep going on the super chat. Got a lot of them today. You notice a lot of lefties are rational in their careers, but outside of that, don't apply logic. While I notice many people on the right apply logic to politics, economics, but aren't very ambitious when it comes to careers. Yeah, I noticed that, although, I know a lot of people on the right who are not very logical about politics. As I've said often, the right is not individualism. The right today is not capitalism. But yes, unfortunately, people are, compartmentalized. And the most productive people in our society, the most productive people in our society today, tend to be leftists. And that's a real problem, and it's a real challenge. And it's up to us to change that, to give them the tools, the epistemological tools, the moral tools, to expand the logic, the reason, the rationality to politics, economics, other realms of their life, and their personal lives. Most importantly, is their personal lives. And this is true on what today is defined as the right and the left. Both sides need our help. Both sides need to apply logic and reason consistently. And we have religion on both left and right that prevents them from doing it consistently. It's consistency. Consistency that's important. Here you go. Jesus Christ, who listens to the Ron Brook show, who knew that Jesus Christ was interested? He says he doesn't need a career, he just needs God. Need for what? To destroy your mind? To destroy your life? It's not where happiness lies. It's not where success lies. Not material or spiritual success will not come from God. Both material and spiritual success will come from a career if you approach it properly. Thoughts on Wagner, Schubert, Liszt, Dvorak, and Bohme? I assume that's Brahms, and it's a typo. I don't have... Man, that's a lot. I'll do a quick version, and we'll have to do this another time, maybe dedicate a show to classical music. Wagner is a genius, was a brilliant dramatist, brilliant composer. I think his music, when properly staged and properly presented, Oscar Bohm, I don't know Oscar Bohm, sorry. His music, when properly staged and properly presented, is amazing. It's not my favorite, but it's powerful and dramatic and can be inspiring, sometimes overly self-indulgent, I think, particularly interested in Isolde, where it goes on and on. We get it. But he clearly was brilliant and a genius, a musical genius, philosophically corrupt, but aesthetically, he became very Christian towards the end of his life. But even Pacifico, his very Christian opera, is amazing and beautiful and dramatic and powerful. So I really enjoy watching Wagner operas when they're done well and staged well. Again, not my favorite. I prefer Verdi. I prefer Puccini, but worthwhile engaging with. Schubert, what do you say? Pretty much everything he did is wonderful. I love his chamber music. His chamber music is amazing. His piano quintet, one of my favorite pieces. Just Schubert was consistently excellent. And his songs are excellent. His symphonies are excellent. And what's amazing is chamber music is excellent. What's amazing about Schubert is he died, if I remember right, he died at the age of 36. 36! Imagine what this genius could have done with the rest of his career if he died at 36. And 36 when he died is, I think, after Beethoven. So, Schubert is the first true romantic composer. Beethoven is the bridge between a classical to romantic. Schubert is the first romantic composer. Music is amazing, and given the amount that he produced at the age of 36, one could only just imagine what he could have achieved if he'd lived longer. Liszt, obviously, from what we read, an amazing pianist, but also an amazing composer. I particularly like his piano concertos. I like his writing for piano. I mean, he's not at the same level core composer as I think Schubert and Wagner, but certainly is amazing in terms of some of the virtuoso stuff he wrote for piano. A lot of fun listening to. Really, yeah, good stuff. Dvorak, I really like Dvorak. I love his cello concerto. Concerto for cello is amazing. But even his violin concerto is good. Is really good. His Ninth Symphony, of all the symphonies, Ninth for the New World, the one that is a tribute to America, is fantastic. Ayn Rand didn't like it. I have to say, Ayn Rand did not like Dvorak's for the New World Symphony. She thought it had too much folk music in it, or gave credence or attributes, too many of the folk music attributes. I really love it. I think it's inspiring. It's energizing. It's go get them. I think it's beautiful. So I'm a big fan of Dvorak's Ninth. But his other symphonies are good. They're not great, but they're good. His cello concerto is great, I think. Well, this is my estimate. I'm not a musician. I'm not an expert. This is just my estimate based on my preferences. All those four I love, and the Baume, I don't know. Yeah, his New World Symphonies is Ninth, and it's a great symphony. Is it not altruistic to be concerned that the rights of others are respected? No, of course not. I mean, if other people's rights are not respected, then your rights will not be respected. You have a massive interest to live in a rights-respecting world, because that's the only way your rights will be respected. I mean, one of the reasons not to violate other people's rights is because by violating somebody else's rights, you're giving credence to the idea the rights are not important, including your own. And you're sanctioning the violation of your rights. So absolutely, it is self-interested to be concerned with the rights of others, because your life depends on it. And you cannot hold that you have rights if you don't care that other people have rights. If each individual is not an end in himself, then you are not an end in yourself. If each individual's moral purpose is not their flourishing, and to flourish they need to live in a community in which rights are respected, then why should anybody, including you, care about your own rights? Is it not altruistic to be concerned with the flourishing of others? No, again, the flourishing of others is of your interest, because the more they flourish, the more they create value for you. The more people there are to trade with, the more values there are for you to access. The more friendship, the more love, the more trade there is in the world, the more people flourish. So absolutely, it is in your self-interest to care about flourishing. All right. Somebody asked about Liszt or Chopin. Yeah, as a composer, Chopin, no question. More consistent, better. He wrote so much. He has such a body. Liszt is great, but I think he spent most of his time performing, where Chopin was predominantly a composer, and you can see that. My political science professor says private property is theft because people are using the coercive power of the state to exclude other people from their geographic area. What is wrong with that logic? Again, one of these questions that requires a whole show. But the point of it is that private property is not a primary. Private property is an essential for you to be able to live your life. Your life is the primary. And in order for you to live your life, you must be the beneficiary of your work. That's where private property comes from. From the fact that your life is meaningful, primary. The purpose of your life is your own survival and thriving and flourishing and happiness. And to achieve all of that, you require property. And you require, when you live in a social environment, for that property to be protected. So one of the problems with libertarians is they start with property as a axiom. Start with private property. Private property, we start there. You own yourself no. The beginning is your life and your moral right to your life, and therefore your political right to your life. And your life necessitates that you produce, that you create the material needs necessary for you to live. And when somebody attacks those, they're attacking your life. They're attacking your right to your life. And that's property rights are a derivative of the right to life. They're a necessary condition for you to live. But that is a common Marxist argument. You don't own yourself because you can't ownership. Self comes before ownership. So you can't technically own yourself. There's no such thing as self-ownership, really. There's self and the right to your life. And therefore you must own things. So you don't start, the primary concept is not ownership. The primary concept is self. Did Dr. Peikoff happen to say anything about Trump's actions post-election during your most recent visit? No, we did not talk politics. And please, let me make a general request. Stop asking me about my interactions with Leonard. It doesn't make sense for me to talk publicly. And I don't like it when other people do it. I find it creepy when other people say, Leonard Peikoff privately told me, well, if he told you privately, why do you think it's okay to make it public? So just cut it out with these questions about, you want to know Leonard Peikoff's view on X? Ask him. But don't ask me what I discussed with Peikoff privately. That's between me and him. Last time I saw him, we had a good time. That's nice time, very, very nice time. That's all I'm going to say. How does Kant teach us to hate life? Oh my God, you guys are asking these deeply philosophical questions in a super chat where we're an hour and a half already into the show. We've got, we're probably going to go quite a bit. All right, how does Kant teach us to hate life? And it's a three-part question. I hope you put a lot of money behind this question. Kant, I can't remember who made this. I think it's Michael who does put a lot of money behind the questions. How does Kant teach us to hate life? He doesn't teach us directly to hate life, although if you read his ethics, they do, because they tell us to be suspicious of happiness. They tell us not to pursue happiness. They tell us that sacrifice, our duty to others, is what's important morally. And that basically teaches us to hate life, because others, why is that a primary? But by undercutting reason, by telling us that we're not connected to reality, he undercuts our cognitive ability. And therefore he undercuts our self-esteem, and therefore he causes us to hate life by doing that. But his morality clearly teaches us to hate life by his rejection. Really, if you really read his ethics, the categorical imperatives, to reject the idea of happiness and to focus on our duties, and our duties to others as the primary. Are welfare recipients designed to be kept pets? I don't think people think of it in those terms. No, so I don't think so. I think that is the outcome, not pets, but subservient and quiet and thankful to the people who hand them checks. But I don't think it's a big conspiracy to keep them down. I think that's the outcome, and maybe it's exploited once the outcome is there. Nobody has an incentive to get rid of it. Is living in Texas and Puerto Rico boring compared to California? No, I certainly don't think Texas is, although there's certain values that you have in California that are hard to find in Texas. you know, most people are moving to Texas and moving to Austin, which is funny because Austin is a bastion of the left within Texas. It's funny that people are leaving California and going to a leftist bastion within Texas. But in Austin, you just don't get the symphony, the opera, the culture that you get in a place like San Francisco or Los Angeles. To get great opera in Texas, you have to go to Houston, for example. But Houston has its own challenges. California just brings things together in a way that is unique. And then the other thing about particularly Northern California is there's creative and productive energy in Northern California that you just don't find other places. Now maybe Austin will become that, but again, it's funny because Austin is blue. But there is this creative, productive excitement that exists in Silicon Valley that I don't know of any place else where you get that vibe of just everybody's an entrepreneur and building stuff and exciting. Everybody's excited about their jobs. Everybody's working hard, working late. There's definitely something unique about particularly Northern California, but California generally, it's also beautiful and new and big, you know. Yeah, it's and that there's a sense in which at least Puerto Rico is boring as compared to California, and there's a sense in which even Texas, at least parts of it, lack everything that California has. Although, you know, Texas, place like Austin, are gaining more of that as more people move in. I just opened my first restaurant in New York City. Wow, the industry is being annihilated by state and city orders. I know. I can't stand enabling my destroyers, but I can't afford not to comply. No plan B, advice, and dinner's on me next visit. I don't know that I have advice. I mean, I think Dave is probably right that New York, at least to some extent, will come back. You're going to have to bear it out, and if there is no plan B, you just have to grin and bear it for a while and develop a plan B over time. So hopefully at some point there'll be a plan B. At some point there'll be an opportunity to leave. At some point there'll be an opportunity to move your restaurant to Florida or to Texas or to somewhere else that's booming and thriving, even Atlanta. But for now, given that you don't have a plan B, you know, let anybody who is open to listening know the extent to which these bastards are hurting you and help build opposition to them as much as you can. And good luck. And yeah, let me know what the restaurant's name is and I'll try to come by next time I'm in New York. Okay, this is a character in Lord of the Rings says, I would not ensnare even an orc with a falsehood. That's good. I like that. Honesty. Remember we talked about the virtue of honesty? When the issue of lying was brought up, yes, you don't lie. Even to attain a good purpose. That's pragmatism. And that's what Trump has institutionalized as now. I mean, politicians always had it, but Trump has made it, I mean, he's taken it to a level never imagined before, I think. And that's the Republican Party now. Willing to lie as much as necessary in order to win. But I like that line from Lord of the Rings. Just based on the New Year's Eve show, you have shown yourself to be a great fundraiser. Might there be a way for ARI to pay you more to host super chat fundraising events for them in the future? I mean, I've raised money for ARI. I raised money for 17 years. I still help ARI raise money. I'm raising money for me now. That's who I'm raising money for. I can't do everything, and I've got multiple jobs as it is. I've got multiple responsibilities as it is. I still help ARI raise money. I still go out there and do meetings and try to encourage people. At Ocon public gatherings, I'm happy to get on stage and try to raise money. But no, I don't want to do more kind of super chat kind of things that are not related to my show. At this point, I have to work for me. I have to make a living. ARI does not pay me, and I don't want to. people are confused enough. When am I on book show? When am I AOI? When do I speak for the Institute? When I don't speak for the Institute? I want to minimize that confusion, not increase that confusion. So I speak for AOI. I'll let you know when they pay me, but I'd rather just do that for public talks and things like that, not for fundraisers in the way you described. Even though, again, I help AOI raise money, I support AOI, will continue to do so. I raised a lot of money for AOI, when I was CEO of the Institute. I mean, basically, revenues went from less than 2 million to over 10 million in some years and stabilized at around 7-8 million. I grew all that. So I've done my bit of fundraising. The people who believe Trump reject all information from mainstream media, from courts, from experts, but then turn around and take info from Trump and Trump media without questioning it. It's baffling. Yeah, I know. You think that if they believe in fake news, false news, if they believe it was all made up, that they would also question the media that supports Trump, but they don't. They believe that their tribe are always right and everybody else is wrong. Mainstream people think DeSantis is doing horrible with COVID in Florida, is a mess compared to the Northeast. Why is the analysis so biased? Well, because I think the media is biased, right? I'm very anti the bias of the media. Now, I don't know the details about DeSantis, but from everything I read, it looks like Florida's done a good job, and I don't know what the causes of it doing a good job, and there'd be no lockups, and I support no lockups, or very few lockups. There still means some. But the mainstream media has no incentive to make that, to highlight that story. The incentive is towards lockdowns and the advantages of lockdowns and the benefits of lockdowns, and lockdowns are wonderful. And therefore they tilt the storytelling. And the Northeast has been a disaster. California, which has had some of the toughest lockdowns in the country, some of the toughest laws in the country, not that most people abide by them, but the toughest laws, is a disaster when it comes to COVID. So yes, Florida has done well. Why exactly Florida has done well is an interesting question that I don't really have an answer. But the fact that they didn't do lockdowns is great. Why do you think the election is legitimate? I answered that. Ayn Rand gave the West Point graduation speech in 1974. Would she be invited to do it today? I don't know. I don't think so. I think West Point is far more leftist, far more in the philosophy department, the political science department, than it used to be. I mean, Leonard Peikoff gave a talk at West Point. I was with him there in 2003, maybe, something like that. So Leonard Peikoff gave a talk, but it wasn't the graduation speech. And then a number of people over the years tried to get me invited to West Point. Again, not the graduation speech, just to talk to a class or to talk to a club. And it was always vetoed. Now, I'm not comparing myself to Ayn Rand, far from it. But West Point is not the same as it was when she spoke there. It's like every academic institution. It has gone far further to the left than it used to be. Is it rational to boycott top private universities that are openly racist? Yeah, it's rational to boycott those who are hurting you. Now, you have to do a real. What is the downside of the boycott, and can you get an equally good education and a equally good future? I mean, it's tough. But yeah, I'm all for boycotts generally. What's irrational is to use the government for the boycotts, but individual boycotts. I missed your show, Dr. Brooke. Here's to a successful and fruitful 2021. Keep up the good work. Thank you. I assume you missed the New York Eve show. We did fantastic in the New York Eve show. We raised over $6,000. And then there was a $5,000, she actually ended up matching dollar for dollar everything. So it was $12,000 we raised in one night, which was pretty frigging amazing. Amazing. Thank you for being a voice of reason in these times in these uncertain times. My pleasure. I enjoy it, and thank you guys for supporting it and appreciating it. What's your view on Michael Sandel's The Moral Limits of Markets? I think he's wrong on his whole analysis, on his view of morality, and his view of what's markets on, what morality is, and what constitutes productiveness. But again, this is one of those topics where I have to do a whole show on Michael Sandel and his views, and I'll do that. I'll do an analysis of his point of view about this. Very good article. I think this is the article of San Francisco that we talked about before. One point of disagreement: the San Francisco board is not blocking construction to protect the value of wealthy people's houses. I think to some extent it is. I think that's part of what they're doing. Certainly, people vote them in partially in order to protect the value of their own homes. I think it's linked. I don't think it's the primary, but I certainly think it's in the background, part of the motivation. These not in my backyard is very, very, very prevalent. Did Leonard Peikoff ever interact with Hitchens other than the debate? No, that was Harry Binswanger who did the debate with Hitchens. I don't know if Leonard Peikoff ever interacted with Hitchens. Not that I know of. Trump's scorched earth policy is a blessing, as it has fully exposed him as pathetic loser and his nativist cult-like followers as deranged. This is an opportunity for the GOP to build party from ground up, even if it takes 8 years. I hope so. I hope so. I hope there's enough left. I hope the people who are left are good enough to do that. We're going to have to suffer through Biden for 8 years, or Biden and Harris for 8 years. If that's the consequence. I have to say that I don't think that the fact that he was what he is should have been clear to people even before this latest absurdity. Are there any big names in business leaders, not intellectuals, who defend capitalism on both moral and practical grounds? I mean, there's John Allison, but no, not moral grounds the way we understand morality of individualism, the morality of rational self-interest. No big names other than John Allison. I mean, John Mackey thinks he does, but he doesn't. By the way, I'm debating John Mackey. I'll have on February 18th, not far from Orlando, Florida, in the Central Florida area. I'll be debating John Mackey, so I hope some of you can come. I think it's going to be terrific. It's going to be a big debate. Basically we're debating the whole idea of conscious capitalism, I think. But I'll start promoting it now, February 18th in Florida. So hopefully you guys can be there. Should be a lot of fun. So I'll be there. This is just a compliment to me. Thank you. I appreciate you. And has anyone associated with AOI been invited to Hillsdale College to lecture? No, they won't. They basically implied and told us they won't. I've tried. People who are alum of Hillsdale have tried, and basically they resist because of religion. No, I didn't mean Larry Ellison. I meant John Allison. John Allison, the former CEO of BB&T. Larry Ellison, while an Ayn Rand fan, in the past at least, has never defended capitalism on a moral basis. I wish he had. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for a very productive super chat. We raised, something around $628. That is terrific for just an off day. Probably have a show tomorrow, probably shorter than this one. And we'll have results from Georgia then. And we will then get together maybe Friday, maybe Saturday, maybe both. We'll see. But thank you. Thank you for understanding that I'm here in the hotel room, and we will continue to be in the hotel room for the rest of this week. Nick C. asks, we're in Florida. I live in Central Florida. Why no more photo forum talks? We're in Florida. I think it's called The Villages. It's south of Orlando. but I'll have more information on future shows. No more photo forum. They don't invite me. Leadership has changed there. I guess once things return to normal, I'll try again. But right now, no more photo forum. We'll try again once things return to normal or semi-normal. So Central Florida will be in the Villages. Somebody said it's about an hour from the Orlando airport. So let your friends know. Book the date, February 18th in the evening. And it's a live event with a live audience. Look forward to seeing you all there. Bye, everybody. Have a great